Yeah. Right. We're live. Good morning, everybody.
Slide just 2 seconds of states.
Good morning, everybody. We're now live in the meeting, and thank you for your attention. So welcome to the Environment Cabinet Panel on Wednesday, the 6th of March. Welcome to members, welcome to officers, welcome to the press and anyone watching online. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Simon Ayres, our director, who will be retiring soon. Spent many years with us, so I think he deserves our appreciation for the work he's done, and we wish him all the best in the future. As usual, I now need to read an announcement. The council will be holding this meeting in person. The meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will also be recorded and published on the council's website. All parts of the room can be seen or heard by the camera or microphones, and any members of the press and public present in the committee room at any time during the meeting are likely to be included in the live broadcast. There is no speaker scheduling system in the committee room, so please raise your hand in the traditional way to indicate you wish to speak. And Carly, who's to my left, will be looking out for those who are joining us online. Yes, I think I've said that. So those joining on team indicate in the usual way. So in terms of membership, Richard Flake is substituting for Rena Ranger, so thank you for coming along today, Richard. I don't think we have any other apologies, although we seem to have a couple of members not here yet. And joining us online as a member is Steve Wortley, and Mark Duran, I can see, has also joined us. He's our Executive Director. And Phil Williams, I'm told. The screen is so far away, I can't see who that might be, but thanks, Carly. So I now need to just ask members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interest or declarable interest in relation to these agenda items. None? No? Okay, that's good. Thank you. Now we go on to invite the panel to agree the minutes of the Environment Cabinet Panel meeting held on the 25th of January. Are you all content with that? Yeah, okay. All right, no, that's fine. So all agreed. Okay with that, Carly, thank you. There are no petitions. So now we go on to the first substantive item, which is agenda item 3, the Waste Management Performance Report. And Joe Hawes, team leader, Waste Performance and Audit, will be presenting that to us. So thanks, over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on Hertfordshire's performance of the 3 key waste indicators. The local authority collected waste statistics are published annually by DEFRA.
Sorry, Joe, would you mind bringing the microphone nearer to you?
Sorry. There we go, sorry. The local authority collected waste statistics are published annually by DEFRA, and these statistics are for the financial year 22-23 and were published at the end of January. The first indicator in the report is the residual household waste per household. Levels were higher during the pandemic, and Hertfordshire saw a decline down from the 21-22 levels, a pattern that was seen throughout England and the Eastern region. And we can see we are the best performing authority in the Eastern region in this metric. The report then goes through to the second indicator. That is the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling or composting. In 22-23, we actually saw a decline in our performance in this metric, a drop from 52.7% down to 51.2%. The prime reason for this was low organic waste levels. 2022, especially in summer, was exceptionally hot and dry, and it was a very poor growing season. So we saw low levels of organic waste, which saw this percentage drop in our figures. This was a pattern that was seen across the country. Figure 2B in the report sets out how we perform compared to the top performing waste disposal authorities in England. We are the best performing in the Eastern region, but as you can see, there are other authorities in the country which do perform slightly better than us. The final performance indicator in this report is the percentage of municipal waste sent to landfill. This indicator saw a decline in 22-23 from 15.7% down to 10.7%. This was due to a reduction in our residual waste volumes and also the ERF availability. For just a note that in 23-24, so this current financial year, we expect there to be a slight increase in the volume being sent to landfill due to unavailability of ERFs and limited inputs in this final year of our residual waste contracts. We've got new residual waste contracts starting on the 1st of April 2024, so we should see this indicator drop dramatically in 24-25 as we expect to send no waste directly to landfill. That's the report, so happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jo. And these also reflects, I believe, what is in the Herts Waste Partnership annual report.
That's right.
So there's consistency there. And again, what I picked up from that is what you were saying around recycling rates as a whole can be affected by the weather because of the amount of organic waste. And if it's very dry, then there's less to go into the green waste containers. So that does have an impact. I'll just hand over to Adrian, and then I'll take Teresa.
Yes, is this thing on? Very good. Can you hear me? Two questions, if I may, Chair. The first one on page 12, 4.8, and figure 2A. That's quite a dramatic drop in the line there. And I just wondered, has anything like that happened before to that extent?
No, not in the last 10 years of these.
Obviously, we have to make it.
Oh, okay. Technical difficulties. So looking at the last 10 years of this data, it's never been this dramatic. So we'll see peaks and troughs in between years, depending on kind of the weather over the summer. But we've never seen a drop this dramatic looking back through this data set.
Yeah, so the hedges don't grow, the grass doesn't grow, and that's the impact.
I mean, I'm obviously, we probably all are just taking in that it's getting more dramatic, and that's the kind of in tune with the message that we're getting from advisors, isn't it? That this is climate change.
Climate change, yeah.
Yeah. My other question was on page 15, figure 2B. How is Oxfordshire able to do 57%, which is pretty much 10% better than the rest of it?
So Oxfordshire is a smaller authority, and they have 5 waste collection authorities, and all 5 of their waste collection authorities have 180 litre bins and separate food waste collections. So their individual district performance is better, driving their overall performance.
Okay, thank you. Terry, you are next. I'll go to Richard afterwards.
Thank you. My question was around 4.8 as well, para 4.8, and the green waste. I don't know whether the Waste Partnership has been able to assess whether there was a decline in collection rates because more authorities started to charge for green waste. I didn't know what sort of impact that had. Bins can be quite expensive.
Any thoughts on that, Jo, on that?
We've not looked at it individually in terms of that, but I think a lot of the charging was introduced prior to 22-23. So there will inevitably be some impact of charging in that figures, but we don't have a breakdown. We can look into that.
Well, on that.
Thank you. I'd be interested to see some sort of research into that, just as so that when looking forward, whether that's something that is impacting, because I think charges are going up again this year as well. So again, will that reduce people?
Matt, you indicated, or Simon?
Yeah, just to add, so there is a small impact generally in terms of volumes that are collected when a chargeable service is introduced in any of the waste collection authority areas, but it's not perhaps as significant as we think it might be. And that tends to be the reason that if somebody as a householder is paying for a service, they do tend to maximise the use of it. And generally some people are keen gardeners and some are not. So the impact, you will see a decline, and we can certainly find that information out for you and present that to panel. We've got plans to come back, I think, in a meeting or two's time on organic waste arrangements. So that would be a logical place to include a bit more detail for you, because we'll have a new suite of arrangements which we can update Cabinet panel on. So that's sort of general comments that I'd say, is that people tend to use the facility when they're paying for it much more. So you don't see a steep reduction, which is correspondent to actual take up of the offer. Yeah, but that was.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Sarah?
Sorry, everything's, that's another question,
Keep
sorry, I
going.
apologise. So we've got sort of street collection of green waste, then there's obviously green waste in our own recycling centres. Does that also come into this figure? So the amount of recycling in our recycling centres is also reduced?
I think that will be the case, but I'll let Matt answer that.
Absolutely, your recycling centres are included in the figure for performance, and actually it's probably worth noting that there's 80,000 tonnes of material that passes through the network each year, and so that's perhaps equivalent to 2 large waste collection authorities. So the performance of recycling centres is really key and critical to helping boost the overall county performance. And if we're consistently north of 65% recycling, we're punching our weight as a sort of a contributor to that overall figure.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'm picking up is the direction of travel will be that there will be higher recycling rates as the waste reforms come in. So more councils will then have to collect food waste. As a waste partnership, we need to campaign more about reducing actual wasted food. Again, councils, when they go out to procurement, will typically look at smaller residual waste bins. So, I would like to think that more of us can get above the 60% rate and higher over years. Richard was next, and then I think Steve.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Interesting, because it's like sort of watching a soap. This is you don't see a programme for several years, and you come back and you pick up the plot instantly because nothing's changed.
How's that?
I'm very glad that Simon is going, because he and I are absolutely ad idem on this. We're never going to crack the whole of that nut until such time as we get a single waste authority. There is some alignment because obviously clearly we've got the waste partnership. So, collection streams to a degree are aligned, but they never can be completely aligned until you strip away the dual responsibilities. That is the 9, now was 10 in my day, collection authorities, the local authorities, the districts and boroughs, and us as a disposal authority. That's a huge waste in terms of time, money, and adversely impacts upon the efficiency of this scheme. We've got some first-class officers in this here. If we can't crack it, then no one can crack it. And I genuinely believe that. This has got to come as a top-down requirement, and it's got to come quickly, because frankly, we cannot keep on sending the best part of 50% of our stuff to, it's got to, the recycling rates can increase, should increase, and it can be done very simply and save a huge amount of money for the taxpayers of this county and for the country.
Thanks, Richard. We're not going to solve that here, so I don't want to get into a big debate about that because that's more of a waste partnership issue. And I know that the leaders and the CEOs are regularly engaged in discussions as to how to move this forward in a way that might be practical. But you're absolutely right, there needs to be closer coordination. So let's go for that. Was it, just checking with Carly, was it Steve online who wanted to? No, it was Paul. So I'll go to Paul now.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for arriving late. I was having some IT challenges. It was interesting to come in at that point in the discussion because, of course, one of the things that a joint waste authority for both collection and disposal across Hertfordshire would face is rationalisations of the bins. And until national government decides that it's willing to spend the potentially tens of millions to take some bins away and replace others across the county, we're not going to get there, are we? It's going to remain a challenge. And it's that kind of investment in local government that we're seeing the direct opposite of at the minute. And, it leaves us in a position where being able to do that is frankly not affordable. The question that I had about the report that's in front of us is actually around point 4.6, because it's an interesting statement. The residual household waste per person lower than that of the other local authorities in the Eastern region. It then says all 10 of the Hertfordshire collection authorities have a level of household waste lower than the average in the Eastern region, which is fine, but the residual household waste per person triggered a thought in my mind as to whether we're comparing like with like and whether the numbers of people per household differs in Hertfordshire from the other authorities in the area. So, within the waste collection authorities, is there going to be a difference in the household numbers of people per household between Watford and East Herts? And I suspect the answer to that is yes, there is. If what we're comparing in the graph underneath it is also not like for like, so we have more people per household in Luton, for example, than there is in Hertfordshire, which I suspect might be the case, then clearly we're not comparing like with like, are we? When we're comparing the household waste, the residual household waste per household. So I was just questioning the statistics, really, because what we might be seeing is a difference in numbers of people per household rather than an actual, in reality, difference in household waste arisings.
Yeah, I think, thanks for that. I think we'll always get into the granularity of this because there are also demographic differences. So you're right, there will be different types of houses in different authorities, different numbers of people in them. It would be very difficult to get down to that level of detail, and I can see Matt nodding, but it might well be that maybe when we do the reports, we search for a way that attempts at least to get a balance on this so that what you're seeing.
Well, I mean, an interesting question might be, and I assume that this graph has been produced and considered at some point, residual household waste per person. Does the residual household waste per person graph show the same pattern as the residual household waste per household graph?
Okay, so that's noted. And we can,
well, it's a question for Matt, actually. I'd like officers to respond if possible. Do they know the answer to that, or if not, can they look at it?
Yeah, are you able to answer that today, or do you need to look further into it? Go on.
I think just in terms of in response, I agree with you, Paul. You are highly likely to see areas of this county and neighbouring administrative areas that has different, per capita results from this. You have areas perhaps of Luton, as you've mentioned, that might have a higher number of houses of multiple occupancy, or sort of dense population more generally in terms of each of the households. We don't have that information to hand. The report that's being presented today is the information that's collected by the waste data flow system. That's what we feed into, and that's the basis on which authorities are compared nationally. So it's certainly something we can look into. I don't have the answers for you now, but we'll give that some thought.
Okay,
All right,
thanks,
thank you.
Matt. All right, thank you for the question and well worth raising, Paul. So thank you for that. Ben, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for the report. It's really interesting. Got a question on paragraph 4.13, which looks at the sort of the knotty problem of energy recovery versus landfill. You kind of note the challenges that we're facing. I wondered whether you've got any updates on this, or you can say a little bit more about how we're trying to not send any to landfill, and so find that ERF space, so to speak.
So at the moment we have a combination of ERF and landfill contracts. They expire at the end of this month, and our new residual contracts start on the 1st of April 2024. So those new suite of residual waste contracts, we intend to send no waste to landfill, so they're all energy recovery contracts. Obviously, in unforeseen circumstances or an emergency, there may be need, but hopefully we will be sending nothing directly to landfill from the 1st of April. This report looks at 22-23, so we've got landfill figures still in here. So our next report that we'll bring, I suspect this time next year, will be for this financial year 23-24. So we shall still see some landfill use. These contracts wouldn't have expired yet. That might go, well, we're expecting a little bit higher than the level in this report due to availability of ERFs. And then as our new contracts start, that will drop dramatically. There will always be a little bit of waste that goes to landfill through processes like street sweepings, and there's a little outputs that after the end of that process, which then have to go to landfill. So we won't hit zero exactly, but we'll be sending hopefully no waste directly to landfill from April 24.
So thank you, Joe. Okay, anything to follow up, Ben? You okay with that? Yeah, I think that's really an important point, and because this is an interim year, we're likely, I think, as it says in the report, to see an increase in landfill. But what I hope we'll be able to do this time next year is at least give how the new contracts are tracking, so that we can then demonstrate that actually the intention of nothing but landfill is where we've actually got to. Go ahead, Adrian.
Just a quick curious question. What's the residual which is left, which you like street sweepings, I think you said, or whatever it happens to be? What does that actually look like? Is it something that you can like squash into a really compact square? Can you convert it into kind of a sculpture material or something like that?
Oh, we are being very HSP. Who would like to answer that one, Matt?
Yeah, well, I think it's part to me. It's not an easy question to answer. There are possible uses for some of the output of these processes, like street sweepings or demurfs that is not. They're not currently contracts that are within the council's control. So therefore, when we talk about our metric, we're talking about we have the ability not to send anything directly to landfill from Hertfordshire's point of view. There are indirect associations with processes like street sweeping. So in terms of the material you're probably looking at some of the grit and the where whilst they can deal with the biogenic factors and stuff like that, so plastics can float off and they can find a home for those. There's sort of material that would be left over in the sort of sludgy element of the street sweepings that are collected by the district borough councils. Similarly, the district borough councils have the contracts for dry recycling, so the contamination that's left off after that portion of that may go to landfill if they can't find a market for it, because once it's gone through that process, it's not suitable. And if those contracts don't have an ERF output at the back end, then potentially there's some material going to landfill. It's always very difficult to put a number on this in a figure, and so you don't want to be, well, I know we're being recorded, so it's difficult. So take it with a huge level of caveats. But to give you some sort of context, we're talking about well over 500,000 tonnes of material being managed against that metric, and we're probably in the order of about 1,500 odd tonnes from these outputs across the whole of an annual performance. So, with the caveats in place and the contracts working well, we hope that we would be pushing towards that 99% ish landfill avoidance level.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Have I captured everyone? Okay, looks like you're all content then to move on. So the recommendation, we were asked to note the report, in particular the continuing good performance of county council compared with regional neighbours. So you're all in agreement, yes? See nodding heads? Yeah, okay, thank you. Let's go on to the next one then, Sustainable Hertfordshire Programme Plan Progress Report. And Julie Greaves, our Head of Sustainability. And thanks very much, Matt and Joe. Julie, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yes, excuse me. The purpose of this paper is to present a progress report on the delivery of the Sustainable Hertfordshire Programme Plan. As members will remember, we took the Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy through a review process last year, and that resulted in the programme plan being approved with a commitment to review that and bring back progress on an annual basis. So this is that annual progress report. And Appendix A gives you a summary of progress made against those three cross-cutting ambitions. That's carbon neutral in our own operations, enhancing nature on our own land, and also cleaner air for all. In addition to that summary that's provided at Appendix A, the report itself provides commentary on actions associated with those ambitions that sit outside those programme plan specific projects. Appendix B provides you with a summary of external bids that have been received via the Sustainable Hertfordshire crowdfunder platform, and you'll see that the County Council has supported 17 bids, enabling over £100,000 worth of projects to be supported by over 900 individuals across the county. And then Appendix C of the report is an infographic of achievements across the cross-cutting ambitions, and can be used by yourselves to highlight facts and figures and the achievements that have been made since the declaration of the climate emergency back in 2019. A few highlights just to draw your attention to within the report. In terms of carbon neutral in our own operations, you'll see that since 2019, there's been a year-on-year reduction in CO2 emissions. That's in part due to us benefiting from public sector decarbonisation monies that we've been able to do decarbonisation projects across the HCC estate. We did use some of that funding to also help decarbonise the schools estate. It's highly unlikely that we will be successful in future PSDS bids, and that's in combination of the fact that the funding regime has changed and the odds aren't so good in terms of what we would have to match fund. Thank you. And so it's highly likely we will need to find external funding to deliver any further decarbonisation works on our own estate. In terms of enhancing nature, tree planting has been incredibly successful across the whole of our HCC estate and also wider. A very, very high take-up rate for the Your Tree Our Future project, with over 75,000 trees being distributed across the county. So highly successful. Good progress made on all of the cleaner air ambitions, very good engagement levels, and we had a very successful seminar last week that was very good engagement from all of the members who attended that session, and very good speakers as well. And we'll have some proper feedback from that session to be able to feedback. We've been notified that our recent DEFRA bid has been unsuccessful, I'm afraid. So we will need to find alternative means to support Clean Air Night and Clean Air Day moving forward. So that will involve us looking for partners to be able to provide that moving forward. Section 8 gives you an update of what's going on with the Sustainable Hertfordshire Central Fund. We have limited funds remaining in terms of capital and revenue. Section 10 gives you a detailed summary of community engagement and comms. And you'll remember that we took the comms strategy through this panel last year. We've had very good coverage across a lot of different media outlets and also in-person events across different sectors of society in terms of the county, working with colleagues and also partners. And then you'll also see, there's the survey, the resident survey and youth survey is live at the moment. That concludes on the 19th. We'll be able to give you some feedback once we have that. You've got a very brief summary there around the local nature recovery strategy in terms of establishing the partnership board and the steering group. And we've also now got some task and finish groups specifically related to the delivery of the priority species and areas. Biodiversity Net Gain, the matching service has been developed and we're hoping to roll that out. But we will need additional resource in terms of ecologists to be able to make sure we have a good function in terms of responding to applications. We continue to play an active role in Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership and also the Regional Climate Change Forum. We have now got the Herts Growth Board missions covering those 6 priority areas, and one priority area is Sustainable County. And there are elements that also fit within the housing, health and also the skills priority work streams. So we've really got cross-cutting work there. And then the final point is to say that the Sustainable Hertfordshire Impact Assessment Next Generation work is in progress with our colleagues in ICT and programming an online digital version of the SHIA, which hopefully will make it a lot more interactive and be used right from the start. And then we'll provide an output to put in all cabinet decision papers.
Okay, thank you very much, Julie. Just to remind everyone that we do have agenda items on Free and Woodland strategy and biodiversity. Of course, this is an overarching paper, so you could save questions for those for the later agenda items. So any comments? Ben, you're first.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks very much for the report. That's really helpful. I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay, Chair. Kind of a general one about the LATF. There are 5 boroughs and district council members, and I just wondered what the pros and cons were that meant there weren't 11 or 10. Yeah, is that all? Shall I come back to that for the next paper? Is that okay? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. So we've had 3 successful bids to the Local Authority Treescape Fund, or LATF. We're currently shaping up our 4th bid. For each bid, the County Council has acted as the umbrella body taking forward the bid on behalf of the county. That's how the fund was designed. In each year, each of the 10 district borough councils were invited to take part in the bid. And in each year, a number have done so. But some districts have chosen not to go forward with the bid. And in this case, East Herts were not among the 5 that chose to go forward. So it wasn't a HCC decision. It was a decision by each authority. And it's largely informed by how suitable the grant conditions are for each council.
Thank you. Ben, you had something else?
Yes, thank you very much. That's great. So presumably there's cost implications or officer time implications with the grant. Yeah, I think that's fine, but we can take that on. I had a slightly different question on paragraph 10.12, which is the Sustainable Hertfordshire Hub, which sounds really positive. So that's been developed as an internal online resources platform for comms and information. It sounds really useful. Is there a possibility, or is there any value in it being opened up to other councils across, whether that's district, boroughs, or town, parish?
Anything in terms of best practice and idea?
Yeah, whether there's anything that could be useful that could be passed on. I don't know whether even some of the actual software. I don't know.
Julie?
Yes, is the short answer. In terms of the content itself, we can certainly share that. The access to the hub itself will be for HCC officers and members, but in terms of the content, we can share that much more broadly, and a lot of the content actually we can put on our Sustainable Hertfordshire web pages so that will be accessible externally. There is an issue with ICT and other people using our systems, I'm sure you're all aware, because we also want to provide similar information and a similar type of hub to all of the schools. So working with our colleagues in HFL Ed to provide something similar via the grid.
Thank you. Adrian next.
Thank you. Yeah, just a little bit of question about the context on 5.1 on page 20. There are some figures there for the council's own emissions from the baseline year of 2018-19 up until the last year. My question is, does the council have milestones to get to 2050 or a few years before if possible? So do we have a sense of how that curve actually needs to go in reality?
So is this, I think that table relates to our own operation rather than 2050. Do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my answer would be twofold. So you've got, for our own operations, we are working with local partnerships to map that trajectory. It's been quite tricky to get the data put into that trajectory because we've got decisions being made almost on a daily basis in terms of closure to County Hall, for example, and what impact will that have. But purchasing other floor space, losing floor space, so that it's a changing feast in terms of our own operations. But we are hopefully coming to a point where we can draw a line under the data that's needed to feed into that to properly show a trajectory to 2030. That also looks at the interventions that we've identified in our own programme plan and maps those and also looks at what the capital investment might be needed to be able to bring forward those interventions. And that's why we're also looking externally for funding to be able to bring those interventions forward. Externally, in terms of 2050, that's a huge piece of work that we're hoping to accelerate through the HECSP carbon subgroup, and also possibly working with external colleagues on that, maybe from Tyndall or maybe from another organisation to help us with that 2050 trajectory. But we need all 11 of us to work on that together.
Yeah, okay with that. Yeah, thank you. And then Mark next. And then I'll have Paul after that, and then Chair.
Lights on? Yep, we have. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And thank you for the report. I think it shows a very good direction of travel over the past 12 months. So that is to be applauded. I'm very keen, always very keen to hear the voice of young people, particularly their involvement in the whole programme as well. And I know at 10.2 and following that, you've shown what's happened over the past 12 months, but what initiatives have you got going forward so that we can see more and greater involvement through schools, colleges, and young people? I mean, do we plan to have a COP type youth involvement? Because we've messed it up, and it's going to be them that's going to put it right, and I think that's very important.
It's very gracious of you, Mark. Yeah, I'm sure you can answer in the affirmative to that.
Absolutely, yes. We're trying not to do one-on-one school activities, if you see what I mean, because there's only two officers, one officer and a student, and we can't go and visit 500 odd schools. So we're trying to do more grouped activities. So you've got the STEM collectives that we do, the conferences for them. We do have the Youth COP, which is for secondary. We're looking at doing something for primary this year, which is quite difficult to do in terms of the ratios of adults to students that you need to be able to host that kind of event, but we're nevertheless going to try and do something with primary. We've got competitions that we're going to run again this year, and we've also got a huge schools resource pack that's being finalised at the moment, which will have things for pupils as well as teachers as well as facilities managers, and that's being worked up with HFL Ed for us to distribute, hopefully by something similar to our own hub. So yes, there's a lot going on with schools. We're also working with the University of Hertfordshire. We've got a very good working relationship with them, conferencing as well as online interactions in terms of us going to their own sessions. We've just recently connected with all 4 of the further education colleges. We're going to be working with them to help them in their own development of their own plans. So there's a lot going on. And the youth survey is a new section of the survey. So we want to get youth voices, and we'll be able to feed that back to you once that closes.
Yeah, let's quickly come back. You answered it right at the end there, because it's very important to get the youth voice, if you like, out there, and we can hear it loud and clear. And I'm particularly pleased around primary schools, because I know that the chair and I chaired a presentation not so long ago in relation to the involvement of primary schools of sustainability around their schools, and that was very encouraging and very productive. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Did you want to come back, Julie?
Again, isn't it?
Thank you. Yeah, just very quickly to add, as well as engaging with the pupils, we're also engaging with facilities managers in terms of how schools are managed, and including biodiversity. We've got a project at the moment writing a biodiversity guide for schools that can be circulated to all schools, and we're also working with Hearts Full Stop in terms of the contracts that we've got for grounds maintenance on some of our schools. I think it's 5 pilot projects at schools. Maybe about 10 pilot sites for schools in terms of HCC managed contracts.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now I invite Paul to come in.
Thank you. There's a range of things that I want to ask about. So yeah, some of them are just straightforward technical questions about the numbers, and some of them are more sort of broad brush and far-reaching.
Can I just check, Paul, how many you've got?
Well,
so I can manage it.
That will depend on the responses to some of the technical questions, actually. So the first question that I wanted to ask Julie was about the table in 5.1, and just confirmation about what we mean by the numbers in that, because it says in 5, carbon neutral in our own operations, but the numbers appear to refer to the operational estate. So in page 1 of the appendix, there is a number for fleet. Is that included in the numbers in 5.1, or is that additional to the numbers in 5.1?
You able to
Just one place.
see the difference, yeah?
Yes, so the table at 5.1 is our own operational estate, you're right, and it includes some fleet figures.
Okay, so it's a bit of it, but not all of it.
Sorry, say that again, Paul.
So the numbers that we see in our operational estate include some of the numbers from the fleet, but not all of it.
Yes, I'll get back to you and confirm how we've calculated that, because we did have significant issues with trying to get the data for the fleet. So rather than me saying what the definitive answer is now, can I get back to you on that and confirm the difference between the two figures, please?
Yeah, well, as I say, it's whether it's additional or whether it's included, and I think that's a fairly important distinction. Because if it's included, to be carbon neutral in our own operations, we'd need to address the fleet figure as well, wouldn't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. The second point around that table is, because it's the HCC operational estates, just confirming that it doesn't include the schools, but clearly the schools emissions, because we've been able to direct PSDS funding to address some of the schools' estate, you could argue that the schools are within our control and therefore are influenceable. They can be influenced. So is there a point within this where we're recording that kind of wider footprint of emissions that are within our control. And, you know, within the trajectory, are they 2030 or are they 2050 numbers?
Yeah, I think when we set this last year, we recalibrated to say that those would be in the 2050 element. But if you can just clarify that, Julie.
Yes, that's exactly right, Chair. The carbon baseline was reviewed last year, and the school's estate was removed in terms of HCC's own operations. But we do still have a lot going on in terms, as you said, enabling and inspiring and influencing. And we are hopeful that our colleagues will be able to give us a report in terms of what that wider baseline looks like as well.
Yeah, there was. Sorry, if I just come in. There was some other work in terms of, can't remember, it was the low skills carbon, remind me what that was called.
Yes, you're right. It was a subset of the public sector decarbonisation fund, also had a skills fund, low carbon net zero skills fund, and that was used to pay for the heat decarb plans which were offered to all schools. But in terms of baseline work, we would need to have a conversation with our colleagues in property in terms of the bills that are paid through the joint contract to be able to work out what that baseline looks like and if there's been any reductions. We'll have to ask our colleagues in property on that.
Thanks, Julie. Shall we carry on, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, the final thing I think I really wanted to just ask about was the numbers on fleet, because there was an initial fairly significant reduction in fleet, but the last 2 years reported seems to show that that's plateaued. And I wondered whether there was any strategy, change in direction or approach that the council are looking to take in the subsequent years to see if we can reinvigorate the fall in CO2 emissions from the fleet.
The short answer is yes. We would like to have a more centralised policy in terms of vehicle replacement, because at the moment individual departments and service areas can make their own judgment calls in terms of vehicle purchasing, and we would like to have a little bit more centralisation of that. The low-hanging fruit, if you like, has already been picked in terms of alternative fuels for some of our vehicles. As you know, EV infrastructure is expensive. There have been some barriers in terms of where EV infrastructure can or should be installed. For example, should we install more EV infrastructure at County Hall if we are going to be shifting over to Stevenage? So we need to make sure we're putting the infrastructure where it is needed. But yes, we want to make sure that everybody who has fleet is considering A, not purchasing it when it comes up for renewal, and then B, looking at why they need it and what type of vehicle they then genuinely need to be able to help them make alternative decisions to internal combustion engine.
So we'll be looking closely at this as we move on. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think Jeff was next, and then I'll come on to Richards.
I think Mark wanted to come in. I don't know if he was responding
Mark,
to.
Sorry, if you want. No, please go now. If you've been.
No. Honestly, I'll come in later on. Thank you. I wasn't on specifically on any of those.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So, Jeff, you now.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, Julie, good report. Thank you very much. Just a question in the programme plan, Appendix A, I think it's page 6, where the anti-idling policy. I did mention this at the Clean Air seminar last week, which, by the way, I thought was absolutely excellent. Really was. So sorry for repeating my question again, but I just wondered, well, the question is really the anti-idling policy we have for county council sites and communicating with staff the impact of idling vehicles. Is there an intention to expand that further, outside of the sites? I'm thinking mainly with, contractors' vehicles, etc., operating outside a site. I think I mentioned that before that, I spoke to the Herts Links guys who use the layover area in my division, and
sitting there with the car, the bus running, I pointed out to the Herts County Council as an anti-idling policy, and they weren't aware of that. So I think we need to communicate it out further than just our HCC staff, but to our contractors.
Okay, Julie.
Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. We will, and we are making sure that message gets out wider. It's helpful that you've said that they didn't know about that, so we can address that. And I should say that a lot of the contractors that we work with associated with highways will be subject to any new contractual arrangements that are coming in by the current procurement, and both of those procurements, services and for the consultants, do talk about widening those anti-idling policies to make sure that it covers them as well. But yes, we will make sure that our message gets out wider. Looking at Emily, and she's nodding and saying, yes, absolutely, we will.
So that's coming in relatively soon in the scheme of things. And those of us who attended that seminar last week, there are "Let's Clear the Air" banners for us to take.
Yes, I've got one.
So yeah, thank you for that. Richard.
Yeah, this is more an observation, really, Jim. As you know, I'm not a full-time member of this. I'm happy to sub. But looking at the appendices, what an absolute eye-opener they are in terms of a revelation about the immense complexity and diversity that this challenge brings us. And I have to say to Julie and her team, an incredible list of comprehension in terms of where we can go. And I'm looking at the progress that you've mapped to date, and it's impressive. I mean, it's a huge challenge. We just gone through the council's budget process, and clearly there were questions raised about the capacity of this authority to afford to move to this carbon neutral situation. Well, I'm here to tell you, Chairman, reading this lot, we are moving farther and faster than one might have supposed, and it's very impressive. And I just want to put it on record that if this is the quality of what we are able to do without pouring huge amounts of money into it, well done to us.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's also the approach around business as usual. So in other words, this is the natural thing for us to do. So when things need to be changed or adapted, then we look at the most sustainable way of doing things. So I think we just need to continue that approach.
Well deserved.
Thank you. Graham.
Yeah, and also at the same conference last week, it was mentioned that the AQMAs throughout the county are reducing and their quality is improving. I'm just wondering if Julie wanted to add anything to that.
Yes, you're right. That was a comment that was made at the conference last week, and I think that's a combination of reasons as to why that is the case. It's not 100% down to Matt and Emily, although they have played their part. We have to make sure that we recognise that there are other mechanisms at play in terms of the combustion engine has got a lot better. People are transferring to alternative fuels and alternative vehicles. People are using active travel, walking and cycling, and using other means. And there's been that awareness raising in terms of cleaner air campaigns, and hopefully people are switching off and not using the car if they don't need to. So there's a combination of reasons as to why those AQMIs are hopefully continue to come down.
One last point, I forget the professor's name, but he who did the closing speech was very complimentary with what the Hertfordshire County Council's doing. He indicated that we're sort of leading the pack at the moment. So yeah, I think well done.
Thanks, Graham. I'm wondering if I'm looking at Mark Duran, who's online. He gave a very good presentation to the Herts Association of Parish and Town Councils yesterday evening. And this came up because I think from the air quality seminars we've had for the last couple of years, the direction of travel naturally will be down in terms of nitrogen dioxide, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're in control of particulates. And there's a wider issue, isn't there, around encouraging walking and cycling and sustainable travel. So I didn't know if you wanted to just, you're nodding, but any comments on that?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. No, absolutely. And I echo the comments that members have made about the seminar that we had last week on cleaner air, which I thought was excellent. And I know several members were present, but once we circulate the slides that we used last week, maybe it would be helpful to circulate them to members of this panel as well. So we can make sure, we can make sure that happens. The particulate question is tricky. The importance of helping, supporting, enabling residents across Hertfordshire and indeed businesses to make sure that they're using sustainable transport is absolutely critical to that. For two reasons. I mean, firstly, because transport emissions are a huge contribution to particulate matter as well as to carbon emissions. So we have to make those other sustainable options really attractive options for people to give them that choice and make it a choice that is a sensible one that they will feel able to take. But of course, particulate matter doesn't just come from exhausts. For the reasons people have said, with improved emissions, improved standards for cars, those are starting to fall off anyway. But crucially, particulates, 2.5 PMs particularly, come from tyres and from braking. And therefore, despite the shift to EVs, to electric vehicles, which is great for carbon emissions, it only gets us part of the way to reducing the air pollution challenges around particulates, because of course EVs have tyres and they brake, and in actual fact the particulates from EVs from tyres are more than they are from ordinary cars because EVs are heavier because of the batteries, and therefore the amount of particulates coming off an average EV is greater than the kind of equivalent of a decent petrol car from the tyres. So EVs will help, and of course they're really important for carbon emissions and they will help with the particulate journey, but really enabling people to walk and cycle for those shorter journeys in particular, and then be able to cycle or particularly use the bus for longer journeys is absolutely critical. So work continues on that absolutely across HCC, but it's one of those things where I think real partnership working is going to be important. So with all of the districts, but also with the town and parish councils who we met last night, as you say, Chair, around them helping get those messages out, promote the options that are available, as much as anything, because there are a lot of communities right across Hertfordshire who will always need to use their car, particularly rural areas, absolutely. And therefore it's important that that those people who can use sustainable transport do, in order to free up the space for the people who need to use their cars. I was just going to make two quick comments, if that's okay, Chair, generally. Would now be an okay time?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So firstly, just wanted to echo what several members have said in terms of the great report and the great progress that has been made, and kind of thanks to Lynn and to Julie and all of the team for that. You can see the amount that is going on, both the breadth as well as the depth of work is really quite extraordinary, and there's some really great progress being made. I suppose the reflection for me is we've come a long way on most of these measures, but we've got a long way to go to meet our ambitions for 2030, and the next lot are almost going to be harder to get to. So I think the partnership working will be critical. The ability for us to continue to attract government funding, but also think about other more innovative methods of attracting private sector funding, for example, in terms of decarbonising our own estate, is going to be critical to getting that last element down to zero. So I think we are going to have to think a bit harder, a bit differently, more innovatively for the next phase as to how we can really make that happen, particularly given the constrained financial circumstances that we're going to be in for the next few years at least. So a lot done, a lot to do, but it will be challenging. But I know the team are really up for thinking differently about that. Embedding everything we're doing across HCC and indeed working with partners more broadly. So I think that's the agenda for the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, I know you're really keen to see progress, and you'll be listening to everyone and taking any ideas on board. And we'll be reviewing this annually just to make sure we are keeping track. No other questions? Oh, final one then from Adrian.
Just one quick comment to add into the debate. I don't disagree with what Mark has just said about particularly about the move towards active travel. Perhaps add in some electric buses would be a good part of the mix as well. Just want to mention, I did a quick Google on the EV particulates issue. A Continental Tire spokesperson said on 26th of Feb, EVs do not produce more particulates than an otherwise similar internal combustion engine vehicle, just because of the battery increased weight. And I suspect the reason for that is that EV cars typically use regenerative braking, which means they don't actually use the brakes anywhere near as much as an internal combustion car.
Yeah, and I think that the technology will improve over the years, so hopefully that can be addressed gradually. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Oh, did you want to? I did say it's a fun question, right? But
I've just got a clarification. You said about no electric buses. We need electric buses. Is that what you're saying?
We need more buses, and the more that are electric.
All right, Simon.
Just on that point, hopefully all things go to plan. We'll have 27 new electric buses on the going to the road in the Woodland area within the next 12 to 24 months. Fingers crossed.
What a good point on which to end this section of the agenda. Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Julie. So we are asked to know the content of the report and the progress made. All in agreement, yes? Thank you. Now we're going over to the Tree and Woodland Strategy Progress Report, and it's Tony Bradford, I think, who's presenting it.
Thank you, Chair. This information report updates the panel on progress towards delivering the Hertfordshire County Council Tree and Woodland Strategy. This is the first Tree and Woodland Strategy the County Council's had. Members will be au favour with the strategy, I'm sure, and I'm just going to pick up one or two points to highlight. The report highlights the background in terms of national and county policy landscape. I would highlight the connection to the ambitions set out in the Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy, and in particular those we've heard about related to the increase in nature both on our own land and water, and that in the ownership of others across the county. In terms of national policy, in May 2021, DEFRA published its England Tree Action Plan, and this has an horizon to the end of 2024, which is important in terms of funding packages. Officers have been working to increase tree and hedgerow establishment in Hertfordshire since the declaration by Council of a climate emergency, and in anticipation of a tree and woodland strategy and its ambitions. The production of a tree and woodland strategy was one of the proposed outcomes within the Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy. The tree and woodland strategy was adopted in early 2022. Tree and hedgerow planting has been ramping up with more than 324,000 trees planted since the declaration, and 190,000 since adoption of the Trees and Woodland Strategy. Figures contained in the report are drawn from planting where HCC has provided one or more of the following, that being funding, delivery, advice and/or coordination. Members will no doubt have seen or be aware of individual landowners in their own divisions taking their own actions to establish trees, woodland and hedgerows through planting, and this is all beneficial, but we have not included these within our own figures. You will note that the achievements to date set out in the report are the result of collaboration across a range of HCC teams from a variety of departments and service areas, and the more detailed project descriptions makes this clearer. Much of the funding for planting initiatives has as their parent source the Nature for Climate Fund tree programme, and this fund is only available within the current Parliament. We are engaging with DEFRA, Forestry Commission, to understand what funding allocation and programmes will emerge beyond this point. It should be noted that the government's targets for tree, woodland and hedgerow establishment extend well beyond this Parliament, and so it's anticipated that further funding will be forthcoming. Officers in Crow and Sustainable Hertfordshire are continuing engagement with government bodies, including Forestry Commission, DEFRA and Natural England, and the third sector, to keep abreast of developments. We are also exploring with adjoining authorities sharing similar ambitions, wider opportunities. The report talks a lot about tree, woodland and hedgerow establishment, but it's also worth highlighting the woodland, that the strategy also considers the importance of having woodlands in better condition through well-planned management. Members from the panel visited the HCC-owned woodlands within the National Nature Reserve in the autumn of 2023 to see firsthand the approach taken to develop and deliver good biodiversity and access management through an exemplar management planning approach. A multi-year work programme has been agreed between particularly the land management team within Countryside and Rights of Way and the Rural Estates team, and this will see in-hand woodlands directed by similar woodland management plans to ensure that they provide a range of benefits to their owner, wildlife and local communities, whilst also remaining resilient to pressures on tree health. So I think those are the key points I would pull out of the report for members. Thank you for your time and for your consideration of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the report, Tony. Very interesting. Many diverse funding sources and a number of schemes. And I think your point is right. We're aiming not to double count. So it's really things where we are involved in some capacity, other areas where we wouldn't count, where, for example, transport schemes where there might be many thousands of trees planted, but I don't think we're including those in the numbers. I presume where we're advising on green space action plans, would we count those, or are we just leaving that?
No, we will count those because clearly we're involved and engaged in supporting the delivery of those plans, be they on district, borough council owned land, or district, borough council owned land, or our own.
And we've also got the engagement with the local nature recovery strategy. So there'll be many landowners that we'll be talking to around improving diversity and woodland where possible on their land. So questions, Ben, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks very much. Really interesting reports. Sorry, I've got.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Chair. And thank you for really interesting. Yeah, it's good to see so many different sources. I just wondered whether, sort of in kind of with a couple of years down the line now, and with all of these schemes sort of going on, you were able to sort of reflect on where do you think the main pinch point is? You know, presumably there's a number of things. There's funding, there's land, there's the trees available, there's people to plant them. Do you think that you can sort of find one main pinch point that where is holding us back, assuming we want to continue planting the trees, which I guess we do? And do you think that pinch point might change?
Well, I think there are a number of pinch points, and they will depend on individual landowners. It's clear that there are some substantial grants available to support landowners, particularly the capital grants. I mentioned that members will be seeing sort of extensive hedgerow planting perhaps in some of their divisions. These might be supported through, for instance, the latest iteration of countryside stewardship and the capital schemes that support that hedgerow planting. Those schemes for landowners which would promote and encourage or support the delivery of more extensive woodland creation, for instance. Whilst they provide support for planting and also for the establishment, so the short-term maintenance, they don't provide for income for golf. And so I think it will very much depend on individual landowners in terms of the decisions that they take in their own family or business setting. So a landowner may be able to make that decision depending on what they actually would otherwise be delivering on that land. They might also be making the decision in terms of their own family position. If they have descendants who are going to take on the family business, do they want to convert land which could be used for other opportunities into woodland, which might constrain those decisions? So I think in terms of the larger scale, there are certainly going to be those kind of issues. One of the areas where we are really focusing at the moment with the two Woodland Creation Accelerate funded posts is getting the fact that they exist and the support that they can provide out into the landowning community. An example of the kind of work we're doing, they were present at a recent real estate tenants meeting. And it's an opportunity to effectively say we're in the business of supporting you, to help you to see how these grants and schemes could support you if you take those decisions, and to enable you to undertake the administration, because some of the stumbling blocks are clearly the time associated with making applications, understanding where you can procure trees from, how those might be planted, if at scale through forestry contractors and so forth, which landowners may have no experience whatsoever.
There's if Lynn Senior were here, she couldn't make it today, but I think there's another aspect. I started out by saying, of course, we're not double counting, but that doesn't mean to say that encouraging increases in trees across the county is vitally important, which is where the local nature recovery strategy comes in. But there's also the element of biodiversity offsetting. So in terms of the growth that will be going on, it may well be there are opportunities for tree planting and so on either our own rural estate or on landowners who are willing to do that. And also not forgetting green investment. So, there's an economic element to this as well, because there could be pension funds and others, which actually will be then supporting the increase of trees. So would you agree with that, or have I gone off at a tangent?
I think in terms of the LNRS, one of the key elements of that work will be identifying which would be the right places for tree establishment and woodland establishment. I'm sure all members will understand that the last thing we want to do is to be diminishing the value of some habitats by creating other habitats, which may be of lesser value or less rare within Hertfordshire. In terms of the availability of sources of funding, I think we need to be, we're being ambitious, and we need to be alive to a whole range of opportunities. We've certainly already engaging in conversations with other parts of the organisation around the biodiversity net gain piece in advance of the legislation, but where mitigation or development, an example would be our waste facilities, where mitigation is required as a condition of those planning permissions to support them in the delivery of habitat improvement or habitat creation. And there's certainly a couple of examples where we engage with rural estates sites to create the equivalent biodiversity net gain offsets for our own developments.
Thanks, Tony. Julie, did you want to add?
No, that's all.
Oh, okay, thank you. I've got Graham next, then Paul, and then Richard and Mark.
Sorry, on a similar vein, 1.8 billion new trees or 1.2 billion trees and 100 kilometres of hedgerow equating to 600,000 hedgerow trees. That's quite a challenge. And when I mean it's a challenge, it's not just a challenge to get the grants and the manpower to plant. It's also the land where they can actually be planted, and that must be a really challenging part of the whole exercise for you to where can we put them, how many can we put there, are we going to create a mini forest or woodland or whatever? Do you want to expand in how you're going to find this land, or have you found it?
Thank you. Yes, it is a challenge, undoubtedly. But as I said a moment ago, we're wanting to be ambitious. I think it's a challenge to find the right land at the right time for all of this tree planting. I think in terms of our own land, we're taking an appropriate approach with that. We're working through the process with our rural estates colleagues, supporting them as they develop their strategic approach. And that is unlikely to deliver all of the tree planting that we're talking about, and there will need to be a significant contribution from private and other public landowners across Hertfordshire if we're going to achieve our ambitions. But that's the purpose of the offices that we have currently, both within Sustainable Hertfordshire team and also within Crow Land Management team. And I think it gives a taste of what we're trying to do and the need for such a diverse range of programs. We already have a program which for the next over the coming years is going to be delivering tree planting on individual homeowners' land. This is quite an innovation, really, and is being extremely successful. So yes, I think it is incredibly challenging. We are actively looking for alternative funding to extend the work of the Woodland Creation Accelerator officers that we have. And we will keep working towards that target. The key in the first year has obviously been getting some of the underpinning work for the delivery elements in place. So training those officers, establishing tree supply and so forth. So we would expect to see increases in performance over the coming season. Certainly, Hannah and Ralph are both sort of filling their diaries with new appointments, following up on previous contacts prior to the last winter's planting, and new contacts in advance of this winter's planting.
Right. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an interesting and exciting challenge. I wish you well.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. So now over to Paul.
Thank you. I've got questions about two sections in the report, and thank you for the report. It's very informative. Section 8 is the first one that I wanted to talk about, which is Your Tree Our Future programme. That's now been running a couple of years, and in 2022 we handed out 46,900 trees. I note, however, that the age of the trees that we're handing out is very young. They've handed out whips. So these are trees that have been growing for maybe 2 years max. They're a single central, developing trunk with no branches or anything on it yet. And the thing that would concern me is we're handing out an awful lot of trees, but there doesn't appear to be any mechanism there to evaluate how many of those survive to, develop further. We're 2 years in. Is it now time to actually say, well, can we go back to some of those people we handed trees to 2 years ago to say, of the trees that we handed up to 4 trees, I think it was per individual. Of the 4 trees that we handed to you, how many of those are now prospering, growing, and developing, and how many were damaged or you didn't get around to planting or whatever. So it's just an evaluation bit that I'd like to potentially see. That may be required that may require next year an evaluation rather than the current one. But that's my first question. Evaluation of the trees that are planted, how many of them survive? The second question.
Thoughts? Sorry, let's answer that first. I'll come back to you. So thoughts on that, Tony?
Yeah, sure. Although I may call Jeremy to jump in with some thoughts as well. I think the key thought, you mentioned the size of the trees that we're planting. And I think that kind of points to a great degree to the approach that we're taking with this. Graham's highlighted the challenge that we've set ourselves. And I think with any planting scheme, particularly where we're looking to get large numbers of trees in the ground in this way, what we're looking to, rather than sort of setting ourselves the target of going out and evaluating the scheme, the success of the scheme, what we've done is tried to establish the scheme in a way which will deliver the best possible chance of those trees being established. So in addition to providing the individual trees which have been sourced from a very good quality nursery, they are small because we understand from research by the Forestry Commission that planting small trees gives them the best opportunity to establish with the minimum amount of maintenance. We are providing the recipients with a range of resources to guide them on how best to plant the trees. Tree planting seems a very simple process, but actually there are certain things that you do really need to get right. And so we are providing both sort of paper material and also a QR code linked to web-based material and a YouTube video demonstration. So we are also providing information around watering, which during the drier periods in the first 2 to 3 years of a tree's life is absolutely essential if we're going to be successful in achieving what we're trying to do here. Jeremy, any comment?
Only to add that in the May following the first year, we sent a survey around to all recipients to ask them a number of questions, including about how their tree's getting on. And I don't have the exact figures to hand, but it was an extraordinarily high survival rate, higher than we probably would have expected. And we'll look to run a comparable survey again this year when we get to the right time of year.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Paul?
Yeah, that's helpful to know. And actually that's useful to hear that we are contacting them. Would it be possible to contact those that were handing trees 2 years ago? Are they included in that survey? Because I think it'd be really interesting to see, you have a 6-month survival rate as responded by people. You have a 2.5 year response from those people. it gives you some surety that the programme is actually delivering in terms of delivering a substantive number of trees growing in Hertfordshire. So yeah, if we could have that information, that would be quite useful. Is the intention to survey those people from 2 years ago as well?
Go ahead.
Yes, quite right. What we intend to do with all recipients, regardless of the year, is to email them at the time of year in spring when it's starting to get a little bit dry and a little bit warmer, to prompt people that this is a good time to start watering the tree again. So it's something that we would look to coincide with that. So people aren't getting lots and lots of emails from us. It's all a little bit more thought through.
Indeed, and that's entirely appropriate. So thank you very much for that. Can we? Will that get fed back to this panel at some point?
Yes, I'm getting nods on that, Paul. So yes.
Good.
You had
That'd be
another
fantastic.
question.
Yeah, the second one was about the highway estate section on number 12. One of the things that I know that it does say, and I think the challenge to plant 100 new trees in each ward that has tree canopy coming below 15%. It's fantastic because actually you're addressing the urban heat island effect through those kind of plantings. Very, very positive in terms of that. And I just wanted to say I really support that. The question that I have on that section, however, is it does say a total of 1,356 trees were planted across the highway estate, but it doesn't say whether that is net or gross. And can you just confirm that these are additional trees, not replacement trees for ones that Highway Services removed?
Can I just add a caveat to that? Because I know from when I was on the highways panel, there are self-sets which are removed. So obviously those have to be. But yeah, if Tony or Jeremy, would you like to answer that?
Paul, I don't have those. I don't have an answer to that question, but I can go away and find out.
Yeah, it's purely because we all know that yes, self sets are removed, but also trees that are in dangerous condition or causing a highway hazard will have to be removed. And what obviously we're looking for here is additional trees, not just replacement trees. And I just wanted to clarify what there was because the statistics don't actually make that clear.
I think that will be the case, Paul. So we'll get that looked into.
I would have expected it to be the case, but just confirmation would be useful. Thank you.
Yeah. As we say, we're careful not to double count, and so that things that we're actually doing to achieve an increase. But thanks for the questions. And Richard was next. Richard, you're on.
I'm off again, Chairman, because actually my question has been answered in parts across the last three questions, so I've nothing to add.
That's superb, thank you. And then next is Mark.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in with a question regarding hedgerow and planting of trees and whatever, and the responsibilities on the part of landowners. There was, I think, last year government consultation on hedgerow. Did we buy into that? And also, what are we thinking about going to the future? Because I think the government have released the responses on that quite recently, and they're looking at legislation regarding legal protection around hedgerow. Any thoughts on that?
Mark, yes, we did respond to the hedgerow consultation last year. I forget exactly when it was. And yes, the government has just published its response to that consultation. Many of the details are still to be confirmed. And in fact, they've announced a consultation on the guidance that will be published to accompany the changes. But yes, broadly speaking, there is expected to be a new piece of legislation that will accompany, not replace, the existing hedgerow regulations 97, I think, that will effectively expand the protections available for hedgerows and change slightly the regulatory mechanism for those. we see the changes as a positive thing, although we are waiting to see exactly what those changes are.
Long shot, you're on it.
Thank you. And I think it comes back to the earlier point about the right thing in the right place. And my understanding is that hedgerows can have a higher biodiversity value than trees. I suppose it depends on circumstances, but that's possibly the case, yeah?
Yes, that's certainly the case. And the hedgerows linking existing habitats can be incredibly important as corridors, but in their own way, probably about 80% of the nation's bird population as a range of species will find habitats in good quality hedgerow settings. So they're incredibly important for that purpose, and also they involve trees and they take up carbon. So there's a range of sustainability benefits that accrue to hedgerow planting.
Excellent, thank you. So I think that comes to the end of that. So I'll just read the recommendations. Members are asked to note the content of the report and progress made to date. The overlap between this work and that being undertaken by the Rural Estates team to identify county council owned land on which new planting can be undertaken, and the uncertain availability of future government grants and funding. So you're all in agreement with that? Yeah, okay, thank you. So our next one is biodiversity duty. So Jeremy Clark will carry on with this one.
Thank you, Chair. The Environment Act 2021 introduced a new strengthened duty for public bodies, including local authorities, to enhance biodiversity. This represents an amendment to the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006. And since 2006, that placed a duty on public bodies to conserve biodiversity. So this change, which came into effect this January, reflects a shift in national policy from maintenance towards nature recovery. By January 2024, local authorities were required to have considered what actions they may take to enhance biodiversity, and where not already in place, to set objectives and policies associated with those actions. County Council has already set ambitions associated with enhancing nature or biodiversity. I'll use the words interchangeably. And as a panel, and as the panel has heard today, work is underway to progress these programmes of work. As such, the approach taken to meet the requirements for the biodiversity duty was to collate all relevant strategic documents and produce a complete list of actions already planned or in process. This was followed by a gap analysis to identify notable omissions, which was carried out with reference to national strategy publications and guidance. The resulting complete list can be found at Appendix 1 in the report. In 2 years, the County Council will publish a biodiversity report detailing how it has helped improve the environment and again consider possible actions to enhance biodiversity. After the first reporting, the same process will be repeated on a 5-yearly cycle in line with the guidance. This will provide the Council with the opportunity to reflect changes in policy and resources into actions locally. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I was just looking down. There are lots of actions listed there, and with the exception maybe 1 or 2, they're all started, aren't they? So yeah, I just wondered whether any members had anything they want to raise on that. No? Okay, no questions. It is very straightforward. I'm not going to prolong this unnecessarily.
Unequivocal statement, isn't it?
So thank you for that, Jeremy. So the recommendation is asked to note the content of the report and progress made. So we're all in agreement. Yeah, well done. Thank you. We don't have any other part 1 business or part 2. Date of the next meeting is 15th May. Oh, hang on. Paul has come up with a question.
Well, sorry, I was a bit late getting my hand up, but it's not anything particularly onerous. So the biodiversity appendix 1, the listing in there, is that effectively our submission as of 1st of January 2024?
Correct. That's the outcome of our consideration. And
right,
the work we are proposing to progress in the first reporting period of 2 years.
Right, okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't sure whether it was an appendix that, you know, outlined for us what was going on or whether that was actually what was submitted. So just wanted a clarification, that was all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you then. Yeah, I've already asked for it to be noted, so I won't go back to that. Date of the next meeting is 15th of May. Thank you all for your participation, those in the room and online. Julie, did you want to say? Oh yes, don't forget your banners before you go. But I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Jim.